12 weeks of this NFL season are in the books, but before we head into week 13, we have to do our weekly tier list, Tuesday tier list. As always on the channel, we start with the 2026 mock draft season tier. The New York Jets, they've been living in this tier all season. They're coming off of a loss to the Baltimore Ravens where I felt like the offense was pretty stagnant. For the Jets, man, I like that they're giving guys like Mechie and Adonai Mitchell some time out there to shine and see who could be in this receiving core alongside Garrett Wilson next season. But we all know that the season's just a wrap. Cleveland Browns, man, they pick up a good win over the Vegas Raiders. And I do think that in terms of quarterbacks on their roster, Shador has the most upside and talent. If they can get past his personality, he's certainly a guy that I would look to develop. Tennessee Titans, I thought Cam Ward had a pretty impressive showing versus Seattle, showing that he is worth building around. Gunnar Helm, DK, there's some young pieces there. Restrepo is going to get some run, so we could see what Tennessee could build on for next year, but realistically, their season is over at this point in time. The Las Vegas Raiders, 2-10. This was a team that kind of went in on this offseason. They brought in Chip Kelly. He's already been fired. They traded for and extended Geno Smith. So I don't really know where the Raiders go for next year. It feels like basically that Chip Kelly move is them saying that they thought it was an offensive coordinator issue, not a talent issue. So it feels like the Raiders are probably going to run it back next year, which I don't know if is the right choice. Cincinnati, even though I think on Thanksgiving, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase being back is going to be fun. With 8 losses already on their season, they'd have to win out and get some extra stuff to be a playoff team or even have a chance to be a playoff team this year. So while I think they're going to be fun, I think that Joe Burrow's injury completely derailed their season. But even with that, with that defense and an inconsistent run game, I'm not sure they were ever going to be a good football team. The New Orleans Saints, coming off of a bye week, Tyler Shuck and that offense was really, really sloppy. I expect the Saints to be looking at quarterback in the draft. Sorry there to the Shuck truthers. The New York Giants, they're the first team eliminated from the NFL playoffs officially, so they're kind of just stuck in this tier at this point. But I'll be honest, with Jameis and Wan'Dale Robinson and Tracy and Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence and Abdul Carter, they're a pretty fun team when we take a look at this tier considerably. The Washington Commanders, they're coming off of a bye week, but Jaden Daniels not expected to play again this week. Season from hell from injury, but a little bit of it they did to themselves, man. When you're the oldest team in the NFL, you got to expect some injuries, and this was the one concern with Jaden Daniels, right? Was his body going to be able to hold up? Arizona Cardinals, Marvin Harrison doesn't play again. They lose again. Jacoby Brissett, Michael Wilson's actually looking pretty solid. So, Walter Nolan gets a thick 6 in this game. So, in their most recent game versus Jacksonville, I think that the Cardinals, if they could get a quarterback other than Kyler Murray in there next year, that's actually decent, they could have something cooking in Arizona potentially. I still got Atlanta in this tier. Kirk Cousins did get a win over the Saints, but Michael Penix is done for the year. The offense still looked pretty stagnant to me. Just New Orleans was way, way, way worse this past week. So it is what it is there. And moving down to this tier, sadly, the Minnesota Vikings, a team that I really believed in coming into the year. Now, JJ McCarthy does only have 6 starts under his belt, but it's not looking good, bruv. It's not looking good. The Frisky tier, man, not a heavy tier this week. We'll start with the Miami Dolphins, who were in this tier last week. They're on bye. They're coming off of a bye. They do have a schedule that I think that they could sneaky win some games remaining. And Tua, A-Chain, and Waddle, that offensive trio you throw in, you sprinkle in a little Malik Washington. They've kind of become fun. I do think that this team is going to run it back with Tua and Mike McDaniel, and I don't think that's the worst decision in the world with Waddle, with A-Chain, with some speedster weapons around them. If they can improve the defense and offensive line this offseason, I do think that they have more of a shot to be a playoff team in 2026. And the Carolina Panthers, man, even though that they lost to the 49ers, I still think they're a frisky team at 6-6. They've got some guys on that defense and Morgan Horn that are young, emerging players in that secondary that are really nice. Derek Brown up front, of course, is an absolute beast. Bryce Young's had some ups and downs, but I feel like it's been more ups than any season in the past. Dowdle and Chuba, that's an interesting run game. Tedero McMillan is an absolute stud. Can you build pieces around him, whether it be Leggett, Jimmy Horn, Coker, Jatavion Sanders? To be determined, but Carolina is still very much a frisky team. We move into the fringe playoff teams tier. I'm going to start with the Pittsburgh Steelers, man. They keep going down. The offense It wasn't terrible versus Chicago because you can run the ball on them. So Warren and Gainwell had their way. But in terms of a passing attack, I just don't even see it with Rodgers becoming a real threat to teams. DK Metcalf is absolutely underperforming the contract extension that Pittsburgh gave him. But even outside of that, they just don't have enough dependable weapons, especially not in that wide receiver room. Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, Skoranek, like those guys just absolutely are not it. And as much as tight ends are cool, Jonnu Smith, Pat Fryermuth, and Darnell Washington are only going to get you so far. I had to do it. I had to move Jacksonville up into this tier, even though I still personally don't really believe in Jacksonville at 7-4. There's got to be some level of respect for the record. They got 2 games left versus Indy, so theoretically, that pass rush could wreck some games on Daniel Jones, and Jacksonville not only could be in the playoffs, but hosting a playoff game. I don't see it. I don't think they're that caliber team. Trevor Lawrence had 4 turnovers versus Arizona, just begging to lose that football game. They somehow come up with a win. The Dallas Cowboys at 5-1. They have a top 10 offense in football. George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb is a top 2 wide receiver duo. Argue amongst yourselves in the comment section. Them or Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua. I'm staying out of it. Dak's having a really solid year. That defensive line now with Quinnen Williams, Kenny Clark, Odigizua, Ezaraku, Clowney, like they are really loaded on that defensive front. And ever since that they have made those moves, it is really hard to run the ball on them. I think they have 30 carries for 90 yards, so they're only giving up 3 yards a carry to the run game. The secondary is getting a little bit better. Overshown is back. So I do think that the Cowboys are a much better team today than their record reflects, but I think they may have dug themselves too deep a hole at this point in the season. And I got to do it. I'm moving Tampa down. The reason Carolina is so frisky is because I don't really know the extent of the Baker Mayfield injury. I would still put my money on Tampa to win this division, but they're not playing great ball right now, man. They've lost 4 of their last 5, and yes, it's been to good teams, but if you're going to be a high-end, high-caliber team, you got to be able to beat the good teams. And with what I'm seeing from Tampa right now, a lot of it injury-related, but this is the level ball that they're playing. We move into the playoff team tier. I'm going to start with the Chargers. Listen, the Chargers are coming off of a bye week, so not much changes in terms of my analysis. I think that combination of Herbert, Harbaugh, and that Jesse Minter defense is absolutely good enough to lead this team to the playoffs this year. Omari and Hampton should be coming back, and I do think he adds some juice both to the run game, and as a receiving threat. He was getting about 5 to 6 receptions a game the last 3 weeks before he got hurt, and he's a guy who can get yards after contact. With what the Chargers offensive line is right now, they absolutely need a guy who could do that. McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Gadsden, Keenan Allen, like there's still plenty of weapons there. I think that a bye week was much needed for the Chargers. I know that Miami beat up on them before their bye week. It felt like they were just so destroyed by injuries and how many guys are hurt playing through shit. Like the Chargers just needed a breather, but I think they come out in this final 6-week stretch and they win enough games to get into the playoffs. I still believe in that combination. The Houston Texans, man, I'm moving the Texans into playoff team tier, and I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, but the level ball that Houston has been playing since that 0-3 start is really, really solid stuff. They have, to me, the no doubt best defense in football, headlined by the best edge rusher combination in football in Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. Waj is a potential defensive player of the year candidate if Myles Garrett wasn't an absolute freak who's probably going to break the single season sack record. Kamari Lassiter, Derek Stingley, Kalen Bullock. Like there is just so many dogs on that Houston defense. You can't talk about them all in one tier list. And on the offensive side of the ball, the Nick Caley scheme is starting to work a little bit better. Woody Marks has been a real spark out that backfield to give them a 2-dimensional offense. I don't know if CJ Stroud's going to play this week, but I'd imagine the passing game would get better. Davis Mills has been really, really solid for a backup. He's 3-0 in his stint as a backup, so no shade at Mills, but some of his inaccuracies, I think CJ Stroud would come out and improve upon. He did start like 1 for 8 in that Buffalo game. I think CJ out there for Houston, they probably would have won by more. Speaking of Buffalo, they moved down into this tier, and I just don't know how to look at Buffalo at this point in time. I can't, even though they have Josh Allen, and even though the AFC feels pretty wide open, I can't bet on Buffalo to get to a Super Bowl. There's too many negatives to their team right now. And it's crazy to say because I don't think it's Josh's fault, but their passing attack is pretty abysmal right now. They just don't have a receiver outside of Khalil Shakur that's dynamic enough to get open. And even at that, Shakir is just a slot guy. Kincaid's been hurt for a little bit, but the deep threat they just don't have. So that part of Josh's game, how strong his arm is, they're just not able to utilize it at this point in time. And it feels like if Josh doesn't have a superhuman game, they're not going to win against these good teams. And I do think Josh is eligible to have superhuman games, but asking him to have 3, 4 in a row to go win a Super Bowl is a mighty ask. Can he do it? Maybe, but even at that, the defense isn't that strong. The run defense has been pretty bad this year. Good quarterbacks have been able to throw on them. So Buffalo, I think, could be in for a massive, massive shakeup at the end of the year. Baltimore, man, I got the Baltimore Ravens in this tier. They have won 5 straight games, but none of them have jumped off the page to me as, oh, that is the Ravens team. Are they still I mean, they were kind of close for me to being moved up to Super Bowl contenders because if I had to be predictive of the teams in this tier, I would predict the Ravens will eventually move up, but we'll see if they get there. I do think Lamar is battling through an injury, but they're still winning games. Derrick Henry is looking solid. The defense is looking solid, but it's against teams like the Browns and Jets, but you got to beat teams like the Browns and Jets, and you know, it's not complete domination, but it also still feels like comfortable wins for Baltimore. But after their slow start to the year, it was a lot of thought process, a lot of mind bombs, and I was like, you know what? I'm just leaving them in the playoff team tier. Indy's moving down to this tier. You may say it's too harsh for the loss to Kansas City. They were up 20-9, should have won that game, lost it. They probably should have lost their last 3 games if it wasn't for Jonathan Taylor having a career-esque day against the Atlanta Falcons, and that still took overtime. The Colts would be in some deep trouble right now. And Daniel Jones in that 4th quarter, what I saw from him, fair or not, led me to believe that I just don't think the Colts could make it to a Super Bowl. And if I'm feeling that way, I got to move them to the playoff team tier. And that Sauce Gardner trade, trading away 2 first-round picks, it's looking a little dicey right now in terms of the value, if you ask me. The Detroit Lions are still in this tier. They did get a win because Jahmyr Gibbs is that freaking dude, but the flaws with this team are still showing, man. Having to compete with the 2-10 Giants led by Jameis Winston in overtime at home to get a victory doesn't spell great for you to be a legit Super Bowl threat at this point in time. Chicago is in this tier. They're 8-3, but again, every game that they're in comes down to a field goal to a touchdown. It's a 3 to 7 point victory. I mean, if you're betting on the Bears, you go into FanDuel and you hit Bears win margin 3 to 7 and 1 to 7, bet that every single week. You'd be super profitable right now. They have a game versus Philly on Black Friday, which I do think will tell us a lot about them because they play a lot of good teams. Philly, Green Bay twice, Detroit again, San Francisco. So we're going to learn a lot about Chicago. But right now, even though they're 8-3, I still have them as just a general playoff team because their wins haven't come in fashions that I think is repeatable against high-end teams. I got Green Bay in this tier, man. The win over Minnesota without Josh Jacobs was decently impressive, maybe more impressive than I gave it credit for in the recap video. But again, the concerns that I have for this team weren't going to be addressed in that Vikings game. I feel like we have a larger sample size right now that it takes a lot to shift tiers. And for that NFC North, I feel like they're all playoff level teams right now. And in the last 6 weeks of the season, I think one of them will emerge as a legit Super Bowl contender. I just don't know who that is. And I still got San Francisco in this tier. 8-4, impressive outings, so far this season. Solid's done a great job with that defense. Shanahan's done a great job with that offense, but with the limitations just in terms of personnel because of guys that have gotten hurt, and Brock Purdy still kind of, not playing his best ball. He had 3 interceptions versus the Panthers. I think that they're just a playoff team with a really bright future. We move into the contender tier, man, and I am moving Kansas City back up into this tier. Hey, man, it's a championship level boxer. You gotta knock them out. You can't just knock them down. And the Colts couldn't knock out the Chiefs. They now sit at 6-5. Mahomes had a really strong second half, and the Chiefs finally in that 4th quarter, man, looked like the freaking Chiefs. Mahomes made every play he needed to make. Kareem Hunt finished the game with over 100 rushing yards, the best rushing game that they've had all season. Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and Travis Kelce, that receiving trio looked really, really solid. I mean, Rashee Rice was outstanding in that game. And when they were needed most, Kansas City's defense came out and forced a Colts offense that's been pretty well oiled to not do anything. I mean, Kansas City can take away your run game. So you have to have a high level, high good quarterback play to beat them, or you have to be able to smother their offense. And I think that the two teams that I'll have above them in the AFC could do one or the other. But at the end of the day, when we get to the playoffs, I'm not going to be able to count out 15 Andy Reid and Spags defense. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to do it. I still got Seattle in this tier as well. Seattle picked up a victory over the Tennessee Titans 30-24 this past week. It was 30-10 for a lot of the game, but Seattle just taking care of business against Tennessee isn't enough for me to move them up. My concerns about Darnold in the big game still stand. Darnold against pressure, they still stand. They weren't going to be able to address that in the Titans game. They'll get their shots this year, when they play San Francisco, they play the Colts, they play the Rams again. So Seattle will have time to move up in this tier. JSN might have the single greatest receiving season ever. If he averages 115 yards per game down the last 6, he will be the first receiver to ever have a 2,000-yard season. So shout out to JSN. And then we move into the favorites tier, man, and no movement here. The New England Patriots are still in this tier, man. They're the first team this season to 10 wins, and I do think that they have an elite high-level quarterback in Drake May. He didn't play his best game versus Cincinnati, but they still got the victory. Travion getting more involved. Hunter Henry showing he could be a prominent piece. You still have Diggs. You still have Booty. There's pieces there. Matt Collins. Will Campbell's injury isn't season ending. So, I thought about knocking them down if he was going to be out for the year, but he will be back. The offensive line still does concern me. And the run defense without Milton Williams certainly took a hit. But even though the schedule has been easy, you have to acknowledge what the Patriots have been doing. Undefeated on the road this year. Great head coach. Great quarterback. Great defense. You got to respect it at this point in time. The Denver Broncos, they're coming off of a bye week. They were in this tier beforehand. They've proven that they can hang with the big dogs. And right now, I would say that they're probably my favorite to come out of the AFC. You look at their losses this year, the loss to the Colts, that's kind of a respectable loss, a game that they probably should have won. The defense is the second best in football, but they get tons of pressure on your quarterback from everywhere. They're still missing Pat Surtain. John A. Barron looks to be a really solid piece. Hufunga's been really solid for them. They do have a good running game because of that offensive line. Their O-line keeps Bo Nix protected, and Bo Nix showed in a big spot versus Kansas City. He can, he's got a little bit of that clutch factor to him. Denver with Sean Payton, Bo Nix, and that defense are to be respected. I still have Philly in this tier, and a road divisional loss in a game that they probably should have won if they were just smarter isn't enough to move them down, especially when I look at those NFC teams. And it's hard for me to move one of them up, right? Because you look at Detroit and Green Bay, Philly beat them. Chicago, we'll see Black Friday. Seattle, you could argue, but again, in a playoff environment, I still trust the Eagles more than Seattle at this point in time. I think their defenses are comparable, and I would still lean with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense. AJ Brown's gotten going a little bit more. They have to be able to run the football, but it feels like the Eagles' main issues are actually something that they could fix this year because it feels scheme and coaching related, not talent related, not personnel related, because we know that they have a Super Bowl level personnel roster wise. And then, of course, the Los Angeles Rams. I think the Rams right now are the best team in the NFL. I feel like I've been saying this for weeks, but Matthew Stafford is my MVP without a doubt at this point in time. He's got 30 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Devontae Adams leads the NFL in receiving touchdowns. Puka Nacua is a top 5 wide receiver in football. Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, that's a real rushing attack. They got a good offensive line. Sean McVay, if they win the Super Bowl this year, I think has a case to be the best coach in football, surpassing Andy Reid. And that defense is legit, man. It's a lot of young talent. It's a lot of speedy guys running around. You got real pass rush with Byron Young and Burst and Fisk, and you got Kobe Durant, who got a pick 6 versus Tampa, Emmanuel Forbes, who has developed into a fantastic piece. And to me, it feels like the Rams are kind of head and toes above the rest of the league right now. The Super Bowl favorites tier, the way I do it is predicting my conference championship matchups, and this is where my predictions lie as of today. But to me, the Rams are the clear-cut best team in the NFL today. No doubt about it. We got 6 weeks left, so we'll see where it shakes out, but that is where I am feeling right now. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you're new to the channel and you're not yet subscribed, I would suggest you hit that button, hit the thumbs up button too. Good for me to know that you guys like these tier list videos. And tomorrow on the channel, I will have my week 13 predictions for every single game. You don't want to miss that. I'll catch you then. Peace.